The manila envelope trembled in my hands as I stared at the official letterhead. My own brother was trying to evict me from our family home. I read the notice again, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. They didn't. My name is Quinn, and until today, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. I was wrong. "You can't be serious," I whispered into my phone, pressing it closer to my ear as if that would somehow make Abraham's words less cruel. "This is our parents' house. Dad left it to both of us." "Quinn, be reasonable." My brother's voice carried that familiar, patronizing tone he'd developed since marrying Lorelei. "You've been living there rent-free for 3 years. Lorelei and I have plans for the property." "Plans?" My voice cracked. "What about Mom? She still lives here half the time." "Mom understands. She's already agreed to move in with us." The casual way he dropped this bomb made my stomach turn. "You're almost 30, Quinn. It's time to grow up." I hung up before he could hear me cry. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, the same window where Dad used to measure our heights with pencil marks. I traced the highest mark with my finger. Abraham, age 12. Just below it, Quinn, age 8. The doorbell rang, startling me from the memory. Through the peephole, I saw Mila, my cousin, holding up a bottle of wine. Her timing couldn't have been better. "I came as soon as I saw your text," she said, wrapping me in a hug. "Is it really as bad as you said?" I handed her the eviction notice. Her eyes widened as she scanned the document. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered, flipping through the pages. "Uncle James would never have left the house solely to Abraham. He was always so fair." "Exactly." I grabbed my laptop from the coffee table. "Look at this." I pulled up Dad's old emails. 3 months before he died, he wrote to his lawyer about updating his will. He wanted to ensure the house would remain a family home, for all of us. Mila leaned in closer. But according to these papers, Abraham's claiming sole ownership through some amendment made 2 weeks before Uncle James passed. Something clicked. Dad was in the hospital then. He could barely hold a pen, let alone sign legal documents. "Quinn?" Mila's voice turned serious. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" The front door opened before I could respond. Mum walked in, her face drawn and tired. She froze when she saw us huddled over the papers. "Oh, Quinn," she sighed. "Abraham told me he'd sent the notice. I wanted to warn you, but..." "But what, Mom? You agreed to move in with them instead." The hurt in my voice made her flinch. "It's complicated, sweetie. Abraham says it's best for everyone. The house is too big for just us, and... Mom, look at these documents." I thrust the papers toward her. "Really look at them. Does this signature look like Dad's to you?" She adjusted her reading glasses, studying the page. Her hand trembled slightly. I don't know. Everything happened so fast after your father." "Call Uncle Ralph," Mila suggested suddenly. "He was Dad's business partner for 20 years. He'd know Dad's signature better than anyone." Mum's phone buzzed. A text from Abraham. Her face fell as she read it. "He wants me to come over for dinner," she said quietly, "to discuss the arrangements." "Don't go," I pleaded. "Not until we figure this out." "Something's wrong here, Mom. I can feel it." She hesitated, looking between me and the door. I should at least hear them out. "Then I'm coming with you." I grabbed my jacket. "If Abraham wants to throw me out of my home, he can say it to my face at his dinner table." "Quinn," Mom started. "No, she's right," Mila interjected. "If they have nothing to hide, they shouldn't mind Quinn being there." As I followed Mom to her car, I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror. I barely recognized the determined woman staring back at me. 3 years ago, when Dad died, I'd been lost in grief. Abraham had stepped in, handled everything, made all the decisions. I'd been grateful then, but now? Now I saw things differently. The brother who used to sneak me extra cookies, who taught me to ride a bike, who held my hand at Dad's funeral, he'd changed. Or maybe I was finally seeing him clearly. I pulled out my phone and texted Uncle Ralph. "Need your help. It's about Dad's will. Can we meet tomorrow?" His response came quickly. Come by the office at 9. Bring everything you have. Game on, big brother. Uncle Ralph's office smelled like leather and old books. He sat behind his massive oak desk, examining Dad's signature on the eviction notice through his reading glasses. Each passing second of silence made my heart beat faster. This is wrong, he finally said, placing the document down carefully. Very wrong. You're sure? I leaned forward. Quinn, I signed hundreds of contracts with your father over 20 years. This? He tapped the signature. This isn't James. The strokes are different, hesitant. Someone tried to copy his style, but... He shook his head. I knew it, Myla whispered from beside me. She'd insisted on coming along for support. Uncle Ralph opened his desk drawer and pulled out an old file. Here's the last contract your father and I signed together 3 months before he passed. He laid it next to the eviction notice. See the difference? The contrast was striking. Dad's real signature flowed naturally, while the one on Abraham's document looked forced, each line carefully calculated. What do I do now? My voice shook. I can't afford a lengthy legal battle against Abraham. No, Uncle Ralph agreed, but you might not have to. He reached for his phone. I know someone who can help. Peyton Stone, she's a forensic document examiner turned lawyer, specializes in cases like this. While he made the call, Mila squeezed my hand. How was dinner last night? I grimaced, remembering the previous evening's disaster. Lorelei spent the whole time talking about their renovation plans for the house. You should have seen her face when I walked in with Mom. Did Abraham say anything? Barely looked at me. But get this. When Mom mentioned Dad's old study, Lorelei jumped in saying they'd already cleared it out. What? Mila's eyes widened. When? Exactly. They shouldn't have access yet. So after dinner, I drove back and checked the study window. The light was on. Uncle Ralph hung up the phone. Peyton can see us in an hour, but first we need to get into that study. How? I asked. They've probably changed the locks already. He smiled, pulling out a key ring. Your father gave me a spare set years ago. For emergencies, he said. I'd say this qualifies. 30 minutes later, we stood in Dad's study. Everything looked untouched at first glance, but the desk drawers had been rifled through. Papers were slightly askew, folders not quite closed. They're looking for something specific, Uncle Ralph muttered, running his fingers along the edge of Dad's old desk. Wait, Mila called from the corner. She was examining the built-in bookshelf. Quinn, remember how Uncle James always said books were the best hiding place? My breath caught. The false back. When we were kids, Dad had shown us his secret compartment behind the history books. For important papers, he'd said with a wink. Abraham had been away at college that day. I pulled out the worn copy of World War II Chronicles and reached behind. My fingers touched something smooth, an envelope. Inside was a letter, dated just weeks before Dad died. My dearest children, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. The house was never meant to be a source of conflict between you. The amended will Abraham keeps pushing me to sign. I won't do it. This home belongs to both of you, as it always has. Quinn, you have your mother's heart and my stubborn streak. Don't let anyone tell you differently. Abraham, success means nothing without family. I hope you remember that. Love, Dad. My hands trembled as I passed the letter to Uncle Ralph. He read it quickly, his expression darkening. This changes everything, he said. We need to get to Peyton's office now. As we locked up, a car pulled into the driveway. Abraham stepped out, his face thunderous. What are you doing here? He demanded. Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing, I replied, gripping the letter in my pocket. Since when do you have access to Dad's study? Since it became my property. He stepped closer. You're trespassing. No, she's not, Uncle Ralph's voice cut through the tension. I invited her here, using my key, the one your father gave me as co-owner of this property. Abraham's face paled slightly. Co-owner? Did you forget that part when you were forging documents, brother? The words slipped out before I could stop them. He grabbed my arm. You don't know what you're talking about. Let go of her, Myla snapped, pulling out her phone. Or the police can hear all about the fake signatures. Abraham released me, stepping back. You're making a mistake, Quinn. A big one. No, I said, walking to my car. The mistake was thinking you were still the brother I grew up with. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of him in my rearview mirror, already on his phone. Probably calling Lorelei. Let him. The real fight was just beginning. Peyton's office was nothing like I expected. Instead of mahogany and pretense, it was all clean lines and modern furniture. The lawyer herself wore jeans and a blazer, her grey-streaked hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. This is textbook fraud, she said, examining Dad's letter through a magnifying glass. The paper, the ink, it's authentic to the time period, and this signature matches your father's known exemplars perfectly. Can we prove the eviction notice is fake? I asked. Better. Peyton opened her laptop. Your father's original will is publicly filed. I pulled it this morning. She turned the screen toward us. Notice anything interesting about the dates? Uncle Ralph leaned forward. The amendment Abraham's using was supposedly signed on March 15th, but James was in intensive care that entire week. I remember because I was there. Exactly. Peyton smiled. Hospital records will confirm he was intubated. Physically impossible for him to sign anything. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Abraham says you broke into the house. What's going on? Don't respond yet, Peyton advised, reading over my shoulder. We need to be strategic about this. The moment they realize we have proof, they'll try to destroy evidence. What evidence? Mila asked. The original forged document, for one. The version you received is a copy. They'll have the original somewhere, probably with practice signatures, drafts. Peyton started making notes. We need to move fast, but carefully. Uncle Ralph's phone rang. He checked the caller ID and grimaced. It's Lorelei. Put it on speaker, Peyton whispered. Ralph! Thank God you answered. Lorelei's voice dripped with concern. We're worried sick about Quinn. She's making these wild accusations, breaking into property that isn't hers. That's interesting, Lorelei, Ralph replied calmly. Because I was there, using my key. The key James gave me as co-owner. Silence. Co-owner? Her voice rose slightly. There must be some mistake. The new will clearly states... Which new will would that be? Ralph interrupted. The one James supposedly signed while intubated in the ICU? The line went dead. Well, Peyton said, that was illuminating. She'll go straight to Abraham, and they'll start damage control. We have maybe 48 hours before they try something desperate. Like what? I asked. Best case, they offer to negotiate. Worst case, they destroy evidence and try to paint you as unstable. Speaking of which, she pulled out a fresh legal pad. Let's talk about your mother. My stomach dropped. What about her? They're isolating her, aren't they? Convincing her to take their side. Myla touched my arm. Quinn, remember what Mom said? Aunt Rosalind's been having dinner at their house every night this week. Classic manipulation tactic. Peyton nodded. They're rewriting the narrative, making you look like the unreasonable one. My phone buzzed again. Abraham this time. Family meeting. Tonight, 7 p.m. Don't make this worse than it already is. Perfect, Peyton said, reading the message. But you're not going alone. Ralph, can you be there? Wouldn't miss it. Good. Quinn, here's what you're going to do. 2 hours later, I sat in my car outside Abraham's house, reviewing Peyton's instructions. Uncle Ralph's car pulled up behind me. Ready? He asked through my window. What if Mom believes them over me? She won't. He squeezed my shoulder. Your mother's smarter than they give her credit for. Trust her. Inside, Abraham and Lorelei sat at their dining room table like royalty holding court. Mom perched nervously on a chair between them. Quinn, Abraham began, this has gotten out of hand. We're willing to be generous, give you time to find a new place, maybe even help with the deposit. That's very kind, I cut in, considering you're using forged documents to steal my inheritance. Honey, Mom started. Abraham explained everything. Your father wanted to sign papers while he was intubated? Uncle Ralph stepped forward, placing Dad's letter on the table. Read this, Roslyn. James wrote it himself. Mum's hands shook as she picked up the letter. Lorelei tried to snatch it, but Mum turned away, reading intently. "Where did you get that?" Abraham demanded. "From Dad's study, in his secret compartment. You know, the one you've been searching for?" Lorelei's face went white. Abraham stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "Get out," he snarled. "All of you." "James?" Mum's voice was barely a whisper. She was staring at Abraham, tears in her eyes. "You tried to forge your father's signature?" "Mum, they're lying." "No." She stood up slowly. "I've been blind, but I'm not stupid. This is your father's handwriting. I'd know it anywhere." She turned to me. "Take me home, Quinn, to our home." As we walked out, I heard Lorelei hissing at Abraham, "Do something." But there was nothing he could do. Not anymore. The truth was out, and it was only the beginning. "They're here." Mila peered through the living room curtains as Abraham's car pulled into our driveway. "Are you sure about this dinner?" I checked my phone, rereading Peyton's text. "Let them think they're in control. The more comfortable they feel, the more likely they are to slip up." "No," I admitted. "But Peyton's right. We need to play their game." Mom emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "The lasagna's almost ready. Your father's recipe." Her voice caught slightly on the word father. The doorbell rang. Showtime. Abraham and Lorelei stood on our porch, all perfect smiles and designer clothes. Lorelei clutched a bottle of wine like a shield. "Peace offering." She held it out, her smile never reaching her eyes. "How thoughtful," Mom said, taking the bottle. "Come in." The tension followed us to the dining room like a heavy cloud. Mila had set the table with Mom's best china, the set Dad bought for their 25th anniversary. "Lovely plates," Lorelei commented, running a finger along the gold rim. "They'd look perfect in our new dining room." I gripped my fork harder. Under the table, Mila kicked my ankle gently. "So," Abraham cleared his throat, "we've been thinking about our previous discussion." "You mean when we caught you forging Dad's signature?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. "Quinn," Mom warned softly. "No, it's fine." Abraham smiled tightly. "We understand there's been a misunderstanding. That's why we have a proposal." Lorelei reached into her designer handbag, pulling out an envelope. "We're willing to be more than fair. The house is worth quite a bit, and we're prepared to offer you 20% of its value." "20% of what's already half mine?" I laughed. "How generous." "Be reasonable." Abraham leaned forward. "The market's hot right now. We have developers interested." Mom's fork clattered against her plate. "Developers?" "Just preliminary discussions," Lorelei rushed to explain. "But think of the potential. This lot could hold 3 modern townhouses." "Over my dead body," Mom whispered. "Mom," Abraham started. "No." She stood up, hands trembling. "Your father built this house. Every nail, every board, he did it himself. And you want to tear it down?" "Times change," Lorelei said smoothly. "We need to think about the future, not cling to the past." "Like you clung to those practice signatures we found in your desk drawer." Mila's quiet words dropped like a bomb. Abraham's face went pale. "What? Yesterday," Mila continued, "when you were meeting with the developers? I visited Lorelei for coffee. Funny how your home office drawer wasn't quite closed." Lorelei's wine glass slipped from her fingers, red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. "You went through my desk?" She tried to sound outraged, but fear crept into her voice. "Actually," I pulled out my phone. "Mila took pictures. Want to see?" "You can't prove," Abraham started. "Can't prove what?" I swiped through the photos. "That these are practice sheets of Dad's signature? Or that the paper's watermark is dated 2 months after he died? I want you both out of my house." Mom's voice was steel. "Now." Abraham stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "This isn't over." "You're right," I agreed. "Peyton's filing the fraud charges tomorrow. Hope it was worth it." "You'd send your own brother to jail?" He stared at me in disbelief. "You tried to make me homeless," I shot back. "What's worse?" Lorelei grabbed her bag. "We were doing you a favor. This place is wasted on you. You can barely afford the property taxes." "That's enough." Mom slammed her hand on the table. "I've heard enough lies from both of you. Get out before I call the police myself." They left, the door slamming behind them. Through the window, I watched Abraham punch his steering wheel before speeding away. "Well," Mila broke the silence, "that was intense." Mom sank back into her chair, staring at the ruined tablecloth. "I keep thinking I'll wake up and this will all be a bad dream. That my son wouldn't—" She couldn't finish. My phone buzzed. A text from Uncle Ralph. "Security cameras caught everything. Audio too. Peyton says it's perfect. Clear admission of guilt when they didn't deny the practice signatures. Meeting tomorrow at 9? "Mom." I touched her hand gently. "We don't have to press charges. We could just—" "No." She straightened up, something of Dad's determination flashing in her eyes. "They need to face consequences. Your father always said that without accountability, there can be no growth." I texted Ralph back. "We'll be there." Mila started clearing the dishes. "Think they'll show up at the family reunion next week?" I hadn't even thought about the annual gathering. "God, what a mess that'll be." "No," Mum said quietly. "It'll be perfect. The whole family needs to know the truth. All at once." She was right. The reunion would be the perfect stage for the final act, and I'd make sure everyone had front row seats. "This is bigger than we thought." Peyton spread documents across her desk. "Much bigger." I leaned forward, scanning the papers. Bank statements, property records, loan applications, all with Dad's forged signature. "They didn't just fake the will," Uncle Ralph growled. "They've been planning this for months before James died." Peyton nodded. "Multiple loan applications using your father's identity, all dated during his hospital stay. They've borrowed against the house 3 times already." My stomach lurched. "How much?" "Close to $500,000, she pulled up a spreadsheet. The money disappeared into offshore accounts within days of each transfer. "That explains the developers," Mila said. "They're desperate for cash." Mom sat quietly, clutching her coffee cup. She hadn't spoken much since we arrived at Peyton's office. "Mrs. Collins?" Peyton's voice softened. "Are you sure you want to proceed with charges? This could mean serious prison time." Mom set down her cup. "Show me those loan papers again." We watched as she examined each document, her fingers tracing Dad's forged signature. "The day he signed this, supposedly," she said, pointing to a date. "He was having chemotherapy. I remember because he insisted on wearing his favorite blue sweater, even though it was summer." She looked up, eyes bright with tears and anger. "Yes, I want to proceed." "Good," Peyton gathered the papers. "Because I found something else. A recording." She played an audio file on her computer. Lorelei's voice filled the room. "Just sign it like we practiced. No one checks these things anyway." "Yes, I'm sure he's still sedated. Abraham, we've come too far to back out now." "Where did you get this?" I whispered. "Hospital security cameras. They record audio in the ICU for liability purposes. I requested the footage as part of our investigation." My phone buzzed. A text from Abraham. "We need to talk. Alone. Please." "Don't," Peyton warned, reading over my shoulder. "It's a trap. They're probably recording too, trying to get you to say something they can use against you." Another text. "The reunion's tomorrow. Don't make me do this publicly." "Do what publicly?" Mila asked. "What else could they possibly have?" "Nothing," I said. "They're bluffing. But maybe we should wait on revealing everything at the reunion. If they're desperate enough to threaten—" "No," Mom interrupted. "The reunion is perfect. Everyone will be there. Aunts, uncles, cousins. People who loved your father, who trusted Abraham." She straightened her shoulders. "They need to know what he did. What they both did." "Agreed." Peyton pulled out a fresh legal pad. "Let's plan this carefully. Timing is everything." For the next hour, we mapped out every detail. Who would speak when? What evidence to present? How to handle potential reactions? "One more thing," Peyton said, pulling out a USB drive. "I had my tech team enhance the hospital security footage. There's video too." The grainy footage showed Abraham and Lorelei in Dad's hospital room. Dad was clearly unconscious, tubes everywhere. Abraham stood by the bed, practicing Dad's signature on a clipboard while Lorelei kept watch. "Turn it off," Mom whispered. "Please." I hugged her as she cried, feeling her shoulders shake. "Tomorrow," she said finally, wiping her eyes. "Tomorrow everyone sees who they really are." My phone buzzed again. This time it was Lorelei. "You're making a terrible mistake. Some things are better left buried." "Is that a threat?" I showed Peyton the message. "No," she smiled grimly. "That's evidence of consciousness of guilt. Keep that message." As we left Peyton's office, Uncle Ralph pulled me aside. "Your father would be proud," he said quietly. "Standing up for what's right isn't easy, especially against family." "Are they still family?" I wondered aloud. "After everything they've done?" "That's tomorrow's problem," he squeezed my shoulder. "For now, get some rest. It's going to be a hell of a reunion." Back home, Mum went straight to Dad's study. I found her sitting in his old chair, holding a framed photo of Abraham and me as kids, building a snowman in the front yard. "I keep asking myself what I did wrong," she said. "Where did we lose him?" "This isn't your fault, Mom." "No," she set down the photo. "It's not. It's his choice, his actions." She stood up, suddenly looking more like herself than she had in days. "And tomorrow, he faces the consequences." My phone lit up one last time, another text from Abraham. "Last chance, sis. Don't make me destroy what's left of this family." I showed Mom the message. "He's got it backwards," she said. "He already tried to destroy this family. Tomorrow we start rebuilding it. Without him." I deleted his message without responding. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The annual family reunion always took place in our backyard. As I helped Mom set up tables under the oak trees, memories flooded back. Dad grilling burgers, Abraham teaching younger cousins how to play catch, Lorelei's first appearance 3 years ago. "They're early," Mila called from the kitchen window. Through the glass, I saw Abraham's car pulling up, followed by Uncle Ralph's. "Remember," Peyton had said, "let them make the first move. Stay calm, stay focused." Easier said than done. "Quinn." Abraham approached alone, hands raised like he was approaching a wild animal. "Can we talk?" "Where's Lorelei?" "Parking the car. Please, just 5 minutes." I glanced at Mom, who nodded slightly. 5 minutes. We walked to Dad's old workshop behind the garage. Abraham closed the door behind us. "Whatever you're planning today," he said, "don't. We can work something out." "Like you worked out forging Dad's signature." He flinched. "I know how it looks, but we were desperate. The medical bills—" "Stop lying." My voice shook. "Peyton found the offshore accounts. This wasn't about medical bills." "Fine." His facade cracked. "You want the truth? Lorelei's family is broke. Their business is failing. We needed to steal from your dying father. To survive." He slammed his hand against the workbench. "You don't understand. Her father would have gone to prison. We had to help. By committing fraud. By doing what needed to be done." He stepped closer. "Quinn, please. If this gets out, we'll lose everything. Our reputation, our freedom." "You should have thought of that before. Think about Mom." He grabbed my arm. "This will destroy her." "Let go of me." "Everything okay in here?" Uncle Ralph's voice cut through the tension. He stood in the doorway, eyes hard. Abraham released me. "Just having a family discussion." "Funny," Ralph said. Sounded more like witness intimidation to me. Outside, cars were arriving. Aunts, uncles, cousins. The whole extended family trickling in with potluck dishes and summer smiles. "Last chance," Abraham whispered as we walked back. "Don't do this." Lorelei intercepted us, perfectly coiffed and carrying a designer casserole dish. "Everything sorted." Her smile was brittle. "Not exactly," I said. The next hour passed in a blur of hugs and small talk. Mom stayed close to me, while Mila ran interference with nosy relatives. Uncle Ralph kept Abraham and Lorelei in his sight. "When?" Mom whispered during a quiet moment. I checked my phone. A text from Peyton. "In position. Ready when you are." "Now," I said. Mom clinked her glass, gathering everyone's attention. Thank you all for coming. Before we eat, I have something important to share. Abraham started forward, but Uncle Ralph blocked his path. As you know, Mom continued, we've had some family difficulties lately. Today, we need to clear the air. Mum, don't. Abraham's voice cracked. Actually, Peyton stepped out from behind the garage, laptop in hand. I think everyone needs to see this. She sat up quickly, projecting onto the side of the house. The hospital security footage began to play. Gasps rippled through the crowd as they watched Abraham and Lorelei forge Dad's signature. The audio was crystal clear. Hurry up, Lorelei's voice urged. The nurse will be back soon. I'm trying, Abraham responded. It has to look perfect. I watched our relatives' faces, shock, disgust, disappointment. Aunt Sarah covered her mouth. Uncle Tom shook his head slowly. The footage ended. Silence fell. There's more, Peyton announced, pulling out documents. Fraudulent loans, offshore accounts, all using James's forged signature while he was dying. You're lying, Lorelei stepped forward. This is all fake, like Dad's signature, I cut in. Or should we compare it to your practice sheets? How dare you, she started, but Abraham grabbed her arm. It's over, he said quietly. They have everything. More relatives were speaking now, voices rising in anger and disbelief. Mum stood silent, tears streaming down her face. The police are on their way, Peyton announced. I filed charges this morning. Mom, Abraham pleaded, tell them to stop, please. But Mom turned away, walking into the house without a word. Sirens wailed in the distance. Lorelei burst into tears, mascara running. Abraham just stood there looking lost. You did this to yourself, I said softly. Both of you. As the police cars pulled up, I felt Mila's hand slip into mine. You okay? I watched as officers led my brother and his wife away in handcuffs, our family's shocked whispers providing a soundtrack to their walk of shame. No, I answered honestly, but I will be. The reunion was effectively over, but something else was beginning. The truth was finally out, painful as it was. And somehow, that felt like enough for now. The courthouse hallway buzzed with whispered conversations. 3 weeks had passed since the reunion, and now we sat waiting for Abraham and Lorelei's arraignment. Mom gripped my hand as their lawyer approached. Last chance for a deal, he said quietly. My clients are willing to... No deals, Peyton interrupted, appearing beside us. They can explain their actions to the judge. The courtroom doors opened. As we filed in, I caught sight of Abraham and Lorelei in their business attire, trying to maintain dignity despite the circumstances. Lorelei's parents sat in the back row, their faces drawn with shame. All rise, the bailiff called. The charges echoed through the silent courtroom. Fraud, forgery, elder abuse, grand theft. With each count, Mom's grip tightened. How do the defendants plead? Abraham's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my clients wish to enter a plea of... Wait, Abraham stood suddenly. I need to say something first. His lawyer tried to pull him down. Abraham, don't... No. He shrugged off the hand. I need to do this. The judge leaned forward. Mr. Collins, I advise you to listen to your counsel. Please, Abraham's voice cracked. Just 1 minute. The judge sighed. 1 minute. Abraham turned to face us. He looked older somehow, defeated. Quinn, Mom, I'm sorry. I know it's not enough, but I'm sorry. When Dad got sick, everything spiraled. Lorelei's family was in trouble, and I thought I could fix everything, be the hero, but I just made it worse. Objection, Peyton stood. This is inappropriate. Let him speak, Mom whispered. The money's gone, Abraham continued. We can't pay it back. But you were right, Quinn. About everything. Dad would be ashamed of me, and he should be. He looked at Lorelei, who was silently crying. We're guilty, Your Honor, to all charges. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Lorelei's lawyer jumped up, protesting, but she stood too. He's right, she said quietly. We're guilty. The judge called for order. Given the defendant's spontaneous admission of guilt, we'll proceed directly to sentencing. However, I'll need victim impact statements first. He looked at Mom. Mrs. Collins. Mom walked to the podium slowly. She pulled out Dad's old reading glasses, her hands shaking slightly. My husband built our home with his own hands, she began. He believed in hard work, honesty, and family. Our son Abraham used to believe in those things too. She looked directly at Abraham. I don't know when that changed, when money became more important than integrity, when impressing your in-laws became worth betraying your father's memory. Abraham lowered his head. But I do know this, Mum continued. James would want justice, not revenge. So I'm asking the court for leniency, not because they deserve it, but because carrying hatred serves no one. The judge nodded thoughtfully. Ms. Collins. He gestured for me to speak. I hadn't prepared anything, but words came anyway. My brother taught me how to ride a bike, I said. He helped me with homework, scared away bullies, and held my hand at Dad's funeral. That person feels like a stranger now. I turned to Abraham. You didn't just steal money. You stole our trust, our memories, our sense of family. Lorelei sobbed quietly. But Mom's right, I continued. Dad believed in second chances, so do I. The judge considered for a moment. Given the defendant's cooperation and the victim's recommendations, I sentence Abraham and Lorelei Collins to 3 years in state prison, followed by 5 years probation. Additionally, they must pay full restitution of all stolen funds. The gavel struck. It was done. As officers led them away, Abraham caught my eye one last time. I'll make this right somehow, he said. I promise. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and questions. Uncle Ralph helped us navigate through them to the car. You did good in there, he told me. Both of you. Did we? I wondered. Maybe we should have pushed for a longer sentence. No, Mom said firmly. Punishment without hope of redemption helps no one. Your father taught me that. My phone buzzed. A text from Myla. How did it go? Before I could respond, Peyton approached with papers. The house is officially safe. I've filed injunctions preventing any future claims against it. Thank you, Mom hugged her, for everything. As we drove home past the familiar streets and memories, Mom broke the silence. We'll need to pack up Abraham's old room, she said. Maybe donate his things. We don't have to do that today, I said gently. No, she agreed, but soon. It's time to move forward. The house came into view. Our house, safe at last. Dad's wind chimes tinkled in the breeze, a sound that had always meant home. Some things were broken beyond repair, but others maybe could still be saved. It would take time, and work, and forgiveness. But we had all three. The autumn breeze rustled through the oak trees as I sorted through boxes in Dad's workshop. Each item held a memory. His old tool belt, Abraham's first attempt at building a birdhouse, photos of happier times. Found it! Mila's voice called from behind a stack of boxes. She emerged holding a dusty photo album. The one Uncle James made of building the house. Mum looked up from where she was organising Dad's workbench. I thought we'd lost that during the chaos. The workshop door creaked open. Uncle Ralph stepped in, holding a letter. Mail came. It's from Abraham. My hands froze over the box I was sorting. We'd received several letters since the sentencing, but I hadn't opened any of them. Read it, Mom said softly. Oh, please. Ralph cleared his throat. Dear Quinn and Mom, the prison counsellor suggested I write about what I've learned. Truth is, I learn something new every day, mostly about how badly I messed up. Yesterday, my cellmate got a visit from his daughter. She wouldn't even look at him. All I could think about was Quinn and how that used to be us. Remember when we'd spend weekends in Dad's workshop, pretending we were master builders? I found out Lorelei's been transferred to minimum security. We're getting divorced. Turns out we both lost ourselves trying to be people we weren't. I know I can't fix what I broke, but I've started teaching woodworking in the prison program. Dad would have liked that, I think. Using his skills to help others. The restitution payments will start next month. It's not much, but it's honest money this time. I miss you both. I miss home. I miss who I used to be. Love, Abraham. Mom wiped her eyes with her sleeve. He's starting to sound like himself again. The old Abraham, I agreed. Not Lorelei's version. The doorbell rang. Through the workshop window, I saw Peyton's car in the driveway. Perfect timing, Uncle Ralph said. Ready for this? Inside, Peyton spread documents across the kitchen table. The bank approved everything. Once you sign, the house will be officially converted into a family trust. No one person can ever sell or mortgage it without unanimous family consent. Dad would have loved this idea, I said, picking up the pen. Speaking of ideas, Mum pulled out a folder. I've been thinking about Abraham's woodworking program. What if we donated Dad's tools, the ones we're not using? Better yet, Uncle Ralph added, we could sponsor some of the program graduates, give them apprenticeships, help them restart their lives. Dad's workshop becoming a place of second chances. I smiled. That feels right. Peyton gathered the signed papers. Congratulations. The house is now officially the James Collins Family Trust. May it shelter generations to come. As she left, Mum opened Dad's photo album. The first page showed him and Abraham laying the foundation, me sitting on a pile of lumber, proudly wearing Dad's too big hard hat. We should send him this, Mum said, touching the photo gently. And maybe it's time to read his other letters. Yeah, I agreed. I think it is. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Mila, carrying a familiar cardboard box. Look what I found in my attic, she said, setting it down carefully. Uncle James's old blueprints for the house. We spread them across the table, Dad's neat handwriting marking measurements, his vision for our home laid out in careful lines. He built it strong, Uncle Ralph observed. Strong enough to weather any storm, including this one, I added. Mom traced the blueprint's lines with her finger. Quinn, what do you think about hosting Thanksgiving this year? Here, like we used to. All of us, I asked. Even family means everyone, she said firmly. Even those who lost their way, especially those. I thought about Abraham teaching woodworking, trying to rebuild himself like Dad taught us to rebuild broken things. About Lorelei, facing her own consequences without him, about second chances and solid foundations. Okay, I said. Thanksgiving here, but first, I pulled out my phone and for the first time wrote back to Abraham. Dear brother, Dad's workshop misses you. So do we. Keep building good things. Keep finding your way back. We'll be here when you do. Love, Quinn. Mum squeezed my hand as I hit send. Outside, Dad's wind chimes sang in the breeze, and the old oak trees stood strong against the sky, their roots deep in the ground he'd chosen for us. Some foundations can't be broken. Some homes can't be stolen. Some families, no matter how bent, refuse to break. We'd weather this storm. We'd rebuild what was broken. We'd remember what Dad taught us, that the strongest homes are built with love, forgiveness, and second chances. And maybe, someday, we'd all gather again under this roof, older, wiser, and stronger for having nearly lost it all. Until then, we'd keep building, just like Dad taught us, one day at a time.